What if the city's most lethal man decided you were his only desire? For Amara, a single pivotal evening of defying Jin Tae Sung, the merciless ruler of the criminal empire, altered her world permanently. She wasn't meant to survive his rage, but somehow she became the one woman he couldn't walk away from. Amara never imagined her peaceful life in Seoul would collide with Jin Tae Sung's world, the cold-blooded crime boss who ruled the city from the shadows. To love him meant risking absolutely everything. To stand against him meant certain death. But what happens when hate meets desire, and staying alive depends on a dangerous heart that refuses to let go? The evening pulsed with Seoul's vibrant energy. Neon signs merged together, casting the pavements in constantly shifting shades of crimson and violet. Within Amara's kitchen, an intimate eatery nestled between two massive steel towers, the atmosphere felt welcoming, saturated with the robust fragrance of jollof rice, seasoned chicken, and aromatics rarely experienced in Korean cuisine. Amara dried her palms against her apron, repositioning a dish of golden-fried plantains on the counter before tapping the service bell for the server to retrieve it. Her locks were gathered into a secure knot, with several rebellious strands framing her luminous bronze complexion. She wasn't simply the proprietor. She was the cook, the manager, occasionally the custodian. Despite laboring more strenuously than ever previously, this establishment represented her achievement. The guests at table 7 need refills. Her young server, Mina, murmured anxiously, her gaze darting toward the rear corner. Amara glanced upward. That moment, everything transformed. A crew of men dressed in midnight suits had stepped through the entrance, their arrival immediately draining vitality from every conversation. Patrons dropped their voices to whispers, utensils frozen above their plates. The figure leading them didn't simply enter, he dominated. Powerfully built, chiseled features, his jet-black hair swept back with absolute precision. His tailored suit appeared custom-crafted to perfection. Amara had spent sufficient years in Seoul to recognize who stood before her, though she'd never encountered him directly. Jin Tae Sung, the underworld sovereign, a man whose reputation moved through the streets like wildfire and whose image surfaced in whispered broadcasts whenever something horrific transpired. Rumors depicted him as utterly ruthless, incapable of warmth, someone who could erase entire bloodlines for minor offences. Her pulse quickened, yet she maintained her composure. This establishment belonged to her. Jin Tae Sung and his entourage claimed the largest seating area. His security personnel swept the room with icy stares, silently challenging everyone not to observe too long. Amara gathered her resolve and approached, clutching menus against her chest. "Good evening. Thank you for choosing Amara's kitchen." Her tone remained controlled, professional, though adrenaline surged through her veins. Jin Tae Sung's attention rose gradually to meet hers. His eyes were midnight black, frigid yet strangely penetrating, like weapons capable of seeing straight through someone's soul. He offered no greeting. Instead, his fingers gestured dismissively, indicating she should continue. Amara placed the menus before them. "Tonight we're featuring—" "Bring me whatever you believe deserves my attention," Jin Tae Sung cut in, his tone smooth yet weighted with absolute authority. Amara's jaw clenched. This wasn't a request, it was a decree. Nevertheless, she acknowledged him with a slight nod, concealing her frustration. "Understood. I'll prepare our signature selection." In the kitchen, her movements were swift and practiced, but her thoughts churned wildly. Why my restaurant? Why this evening? Through the service window, she noticed customers exchanging nervous glances. Several appeared ready to bolt, yet nobody dared make a move that might attract unwanted attention. When she emerged carrying plates loaded with steaming jollof rice, herb-crusted chicken, and crispy fried plantains, Jin Tae Sung offered no acknowledgement. He simply observed the dishes momentarily, then began eating with deliberate movements, as if judging every bite. Every eye in the restaurant tracked his actions. After consuming a modest portion, he reclined in his seat, retrieved his cloth napkin, and wiped his mouth carefully. His face betrayed nothing. Then, with a careless sweep of his hand, he sent the entire plate crashing to the floor. It exploded on impact, ceramic fragments scattering, savory sauce spraying across the spotless tile. Shocked gasps rippled through the room. Amara went rigid. Jin Tae Sung's voice drifted through the stunned silence like venom. "You should feel privileged. I bothered tasting what you prepared." Mina's fingers covered her lips in horror. The remaining diners lowered their gazes. Not a soul dared breathe audibly. This was protocol. You remained quiet, accepted the humiliation, and felt grateful you survived. But Amara's spirit wasn't wired for submission. Her fingers balled into tight fists as fury heated her cheeks. Deliberately, she moved forward, her footsteps grinding over the shattered porcelain. She positioned herself at the edge of his table, shoulders squared, head held high. "You're going to settle your bill," she stated, her voice unwavering. Jin Tae Sung's head angled slightly, those obsidian eyes sharpening. "Repeat that." "I know you heard me perfectly," Amara responded, her tone hardened like iron. "You consume food in my establishment, you compensate me. You don't get to destroy my property and leave as if you rule this place." The entire room fell into absolute silence. Even the atmosphere seemed suspended. One of his lieutenants shot to his feet, rage contorting his expression. "Mind how you speak, woman. Remain seated." Jin Tae Sung's instruction was barely above a whisper, yet it cracked through the space like a thunderclap. The lieutenant immediately complied, sinking back down. Now Jin Tae Sung rose, his frame dwarfing Amara's. His aura was crushing like a tempest compressed into human shape. He bent forward until she could distinguish the thin scar tracing his cheekbone. "You possess courage," he breathed, his words warming her skin. "But courage crumbles when it faces iron." Amara's heartbeat thundered in her chest, but she held her ground without flinching. Her response sliced through the thick tension. "Iron corrodes when exposed to the storm. Don't challenge me, Jin Tae Sung." Speaking his complete name aloud triggered another wave of gasps throughout the room. His name was never spoken, not by anyone, not ever. For a fleeting instant, genuine surprise flickered across his features. His mouth curved into something caught between amusement and incredulity. "Such audacity," he murmured. "Absolutely." Her brown eyes remained locked on his. She grabbed the check holder from behind her, scrawled the total, and dropped it firmly on the table between them. "Your total comes to 30,001. Payment accepted in cash or card." The tension fractured into disbelieving silence. Jin Tae Sung's men tensed visibly, anticipating his response. Had she lost her mind completely? Did she have a death wish standing there tonight? Jin Tae Sung examined her intently for what felt like an eternity. His expression remained unreadable, but his eyes, those eyes blazed with something unfamiliar. Not merely anger, not simply arrogance, something deeper, more complex. He made no move toward payment. Instead, he advanced another step, near enough that she detected the subtle hint of sandalwood in his cologne. His voice dropped lower, soft yet menacing. "You will come to regret this moment." Then, without additional words, he pivoted and marched toward the exit, his men trailing behind like extensions of his shadow. The small bell above the entrance chimed delicately as they departed, an almost comical sound against the oppressive silence lingering in their wake. The instant they vanished, the restaurant exploded into frantic whispers. Has she completely lost it? Speaking to Jin Tae Sung that way? She's marked for death. He's definitely returning. Mina rushed to Amara's side, her hands visibly shaking. "Amara, what on earth have you done?" Amara crouched down and began gathering the broken ceramic pieces, her expression composed despite her racing pulse. "What needed to be done?" she answered matter-of-factly. But as she discarded the fragments into the waste bin, she felt it. a certainty settling deep in her bones. This evening had altered the course of everything. She had confronted an emperor within his own domain, and emperors never forgive acts of rebellion. The morning following the encounter, Amara's kitchen felt unusually subdued. The typical buzz of conversation from regular patrons seemed diminished, as if dread had seeped through the neighborhood overnight like poison. Amara arranged trays of freshly made puff-puff on display, but nobody approached to purchase them. Mina fidgeted near the payment terminal, her attention jumping anxiously toward the entrance every few moments. "Do you believe he'll return?" she finally voiced. Her words barely steady. Jin Tae Sung's penetrating
Amara
gaze lingered, drying her hands with a kitchen towel. His words, quiet yet lethal, had evaded her for most of the previous night. Through her consciousness. "You will come to regret this moment." She squared her posture. "Should he appear again, he'll discover me still here." Mina stared at her as if she'd gone completely mad. "Amara, individuals vanish after confronting him. Are you seeking that fate?" Amara manufactured a reassuring expression. "I didn't travel halfway across the world to Seoul just to vanish into thin air." Yet internally, uncertainty gnawed at her resolve. She'd witnessed enough in this metropolis to understand that authority like Jin Tae Sung's wasn't merely theatrical. He wielded the type of control that could dismantle someone's entire existence without any visible effort, and within days she discovered precisely what that entailed. It began with her supply chain, her regular provider for grains and poultry, the sole Korean distributor who carried the authentic products she required, contacted her with halting excuses. "My sincerest apologies, Miss Amara, but continuing our deliveries to your location is no longer possible." "For what reason?" she pressed, clutching her mobile device tighter against her ear. An uncomfortable pause stretched between them, followed by an exhale of resignation. Instructions came from management. "Please don't contact us moving forward." The connection severed abruptly. Before noon, 2 additional vendors withdrew their services. Before sunset, even her packaging materials company terminated their agreement. Amara found herself standing alone in her kitchen that evening, palms pressed against the prep surface. The storage areas that had been abundantly stocked mere hours ago now appeared distressingly empty. Understanding who orchestrated this didn't require much intelligence. Jin Tae Sung. The man had no need to return with theatrics or additional destruction. His absence proved far more dangerous, his influence far more horrifying. As she secured the establishment for the evening, she noticed a sleek black vehicle stationed across the roadway. Its darkened windows concealed whoever occupied it, yet she sensed their observation as she fastened the locks. Her skin prickled with apprehension, but she elevated her chin and proceeded homeward without altering her stride. Time crawled forward. Patronage diminished steadily. Her loyal customers ceased appearing, offering weak explanations about scheduling conflicts. But Amara recognized reality. Nobody desired to provoke Jin Tae Sung's wrath. Even so, she rejected the notion of shuttering her business. Each dawn, she prepared meals using whatever remained in her depleting inventory. Each dusk, she sanitized the dining surfaces, regardless of whether merely a handful of guests had occupied them. Yet nightly, that identical black vehicle materialized across the street, observing, lingering. One twilight, after securing the premises, Amara pivoted and discovered a suited man blocking her path. She retreated instinctively, her pulse accelerating. "State your business." The individual inclined his head respectfully. "I delivered a message. My employer wishes an audience with you." Her hands clenched reflexively. "And should I decline?" The messenger's demeanor remained unchanged. "Then we maintain our position. However, my employer possesses limited patience." Amara drew a measured breath, her ribcage constricting with anxiety, yet she refused to be escorted like captured prey. "Inform your employer," she declared with conviction, "that should he desire conversation, he knows my location." The messenger's eyes betrayed a flash of something, possibly astonishment, before he bowed once more and departed, retreating into the waiting vehicle. Amara remained stationary, the evening breeze biting against her exposed skin. Her limbs felt weighted, yet her determination blazed fiercely. The harassment intensified substantially. One afternoon, she reached the restaurant discovering the entrance glass was completely destroyed. Crystalline fragments sparkled across the flooring, furniture capsized everywhere. Someone had vandalized her walls with aggressive crimson markings, symbols unfamiliar to her, yet instinctively connected to Jin Tae Sung's criminal empire. Mina dissolved into sobs upon witnessing the devastation. "This must end, Amara, I'm begging you. Our lives aren't worth this risk." Amara surveyed the destruction, fists quaking at her sides. Momentarily, hopelessness threatened to overwhelm her, but then she recalled her purpose for journeying to Seoul, her reasons for battling so fiercely to establish this business. Her deceased grandmother's guidance resonated through her consciousness. "Remain upright, Amara. The universe respects only those who refuse submission." With unwavering hands, she retrieved the cleaning supplies. "We restore everything. We operate tomorrow exactly as planned." Mina observed her as though she'd abandoned sanity entirely. Perhaps she had, but surrender would validate Jin Tae Sung's victory. And Amara hadn't journeyed here to accept defeat. That evening, while scrubbing the final traces of crimson paint from the surfaces, the entrance opened without announcement. The distinctive sound of expensive footwear against the wooden flooring caused her to stiffen. Gradually, she rotated. There stood Jin Tae Sung. No security detail this occasion, no subordinates in formal attire, simply him, occupying the threshold as if he commanded the very oxygen she consumed. He advanced inward, illumination from the exterior projecting his silhouette extensively across the floor. His pristine charcoal suit appeared flawless, his aura suffocating. Amara straightened, gripping the cleaning cloth like defensive equipment. "Arrived to verify whether I've surrendered yet?" Jin Tae Sung's mouth curved into the slightest smile. "Still operating. Remarkable." His attention surveyed the partially restored walls, the shattered glass still accumulated in the corner. Then his focus returned to hers, piercing as daggers. "This could have concluded simply," he stated quietly. A single gesture of deference was required. Yet instead, he motioned vaguely toward the chaos. "You persist." Amara's breathing remained controlled, though rapid. "This establishment belongs to me, and nobody will strip it from my possession, including you." Jin Tae Sung advanced nearer. The atmosphere appeared to condense around his presence, saturated with unspoken meaning. His gaze penetrated hers, enigmatic yet strangely analytical. "Fear doesn't govern you," he observed softly. Amara swallowed against the dryness constricting her throat. Terror coiled within her absolutely, but she concealed it completely. "Perhaps it exists, but I refuse its dominance over my choices." Extended silence expanded between them. Only the distant murmur of urban activity penetrated the stillness. Then, without warning, Jin Tae Sung released a low, shadowy chuckle that transmitted shivers cascading down her vertebrae. "You possess either genuine courage," he remarked, "or complete recklessness." He inclined marginally closer, near enough that she detected the sandalwood and ember notes of his fragrance. His voice descended to a threatening whisper. "And I remain undecided which quality intrigues me more." With that declaration, he rotated precisely and exited, the entrance closing gently behind his departure. Amara remained immobilized, her heartbeat thundering wildly. She had anticipated rage, brutality, perhaps total annihilation. But what she glimpsed within his eyes disturbed her profoundly more. Because during that brief, electrically charged instant, she couldn't determine whether Jin Tae Sung intended her destruction or if he had just identified his newest fixation. The morning following Jin Tae Sung's unanticipated appearance, Amara awakened with the vision of his expression branded into her consciousness. She remained motionless in bed momentarily, studying the ceiling, her heart still turbulent. His voice reverberated through her awareness, low, provocative, yet seemingly captivated. You possess either genuine courage or complete recklessness, and I remain undecided which quality intrigues me more. Amara shook her head forcefully, expelling the recollection. She couldn't permit herself to contemplate him. Not in that manner. He embodied peril clothed in sophistication, a predator who grinned while displaying his fangs. She had persisted this extensively in Seoul through diligence and discretion, not by engaging with demons. Still, she couldn't dismiss the disquiet festering in her chest. Something had transformed within him that previous evening. She had witnessed it reflected in his gaze, an illumination unrelated to fury and entirely connected to fascination. And Jin Tae Sung's fascination represented the absolute last circumstance she required. At the restaurant, Amara attempted concentrating on preparation, on maintenance, on sustaining operations. But she recognized it immediately. Additional unfamiliar faces materialized among her clientele, individuals who didn't naturally belong among typical guests. Their observation extended excessively long. Their inquiries regarding her cuisine seemed overly practiced. They compensated with currency, left substantial gratuities, and departed having consumed minimally. Surveillance operatives monitoring her, transmitting intelligence back to him. Mina noticed simultaneously. "Amara," she whispered anxiously while returning dishes to the kitchen. "Those individuals terrify me." Amara offered a strained smile. Their interest will diminish eventually. But she didn't trust her own reassurance. That evening, while journeying homeward, Amara realized someone was tracking her movements. The rhythm of footsteps mirrored hers throughout the confined passageway, separating residential structures. She halted abruptly. The rhythm ceased, her heartbeat accelerated. Whirling around, she identified him. Jin Tae Sung. He wasn't dressed formally for this occasion. He wore an understated dark overcoat, his hair falling naturally across his brow, yet his aura remained equally overwhelming. He reclined against the brick surface as if he'd been anticipating her arrival indefinitely. Amara's tone emerged harsher than planned. "Have you resorted to following me now?" His mouth curved slightly. "Following sounds so crude. I prefer observing." "Observing?" she echoed in disbelief. He separated from the wall, his movements smooth, distinctly predatory. "You fascinate me," Amara tensed. "I never requested your fascination." "That's the nature of flames," Jin Tae Sung murmured, advancing nearer. "They never seek attention. They simply ignite, and everyone surrounding them has no alternative but to sense the warmth." Her respiration faltered, but she compelled herself against retreating. "Should you've arrived to threaten me once more, it's ineffective." "Threatened?" His tone felt like silk, yet beneath lay iron. "No, Amara. Had I intended intimidation, you wouldn't remain standing here." Her pulse thundered within her ribcage, but she maintained eye contact. "Then state your purpose." His examination swept across her features, unhurried and calculated, as though seeking something concealed. "Honestly," he responded quietly, "I'm still determining that." The response unsettled her more profoundly than any direct menace could. Throughout the following days, his existence became impossible to ignore. Wherever Amara travelled, she sensed him or his operatives. At the marketplace, she'd notice a figure in dark clothing monitoring her from distant vendor stalls. On public transport, she'd feel a tension burning into her until she pivoted, only catching the briefest glimpse of someone disappearing into masses of commuters. And occasionally, glancing upward from her kitchen window during late hours, she convinced herself she spotted him across the roadway, positioned beneath the streetlight, vapor rising from the cigarette between his fingers. He never entered. He never conversed. He simply observed, and strangely, that proved more disturbing. Her patronage declined further. Information circulated rapidly. Amara's kitchen no longer represented safety. Some murmured that she possessed Mafia protection. Others insisted she'd provoked their fury. Regardless, ordinary citizens avoided her establishment, yet the vacant seating didn't devastate her spirit as intensely as the isolation did. One evening, after securing the restaurant, she settled at a table and pressed her face into her palms. Her chest constricted with weariness, exasperation, and terror she refused displaying. Tears don't become you. Her head jerked upward. Jin Tae Sung occupied the entryway, his imposing figure silhouetted by the faint exterior illumination. He had entered soundlessly, as though darkness itself granted him passage. Amara sprang to her feet, wiping her face hastily. "You once more." "Myself once more," he confirmed smoothly, stepping inward. "Why does my presence surprise you?" "Because civilized individuals announce themselves," his smirk intensified. "Do I resemble civilization to you?" She released a sharp exhale, folding her arms. "For what reason are you here?" He studied her extensively, then stated plainly, "Because I chose to be." The sheer boldness provoked bitter laughter from her. "You demolished my livelihood, you traumatized my employees, and now you appear because you felt inclined." His demeanor remained unchanged, but his eyes wavered momentarily with something unguarded. "I expressed previously, Amara, you captivate me. Nobody addresses me as you do." "Perhaps that's because everyone else values their survival," she retorted. Momentarily, stillness suspended between them. Then, without warning, Jin Tae Sung released a low chuckle. It wasn't malicious on this occasion. It resonated genuine, surprisingly pleasant. Amara blinked rapidly. She'd never heard him laugh previously. The sound disturbed her more than his warnings. "Are you aware how extensive the duration has been?" he voiced softly, almost introspectively, "since anyone dared addressing me that way." She tightened her jaw, refusing persuasion. "Perhaps you require more individuals speaking honestly to you." Jin Tae Sung's focus secured onto hers, penetrating, enigmatic. Then he advanced closer, sufficiently near she sensed the warmth emanating from him. "You embody fire, Amara." "And myself," his lips shaped into a perilous smile. "I've existed in the cold excessively long." Her breathing stuttered. For the initial moment since encountering him, she experienced something transforming internally. Not terror, not fury, but something considerably more hazardous, an attraction. That evening after his departure, Amara remained alone within the restaurant extending past midnight. Her thoughts churned tempestuously. She should despise him. She should desire complete distance from him. He represented chaos, peril, devastation in human manifestation. Yet her fingers trembled, recalling how his eyes had softened momentarily, how his laughter sounded like someone rediscovering something forgotten he could experience. It terrified her beyond his threats because she recognized with sinking comprehension that Jin Tae Sung wasn't merely challenging her resolve anymore. He was drawing her into his realm strand by strand, and she remained uncertain how much longer she could resist. The restaurant felt increasingly oppressive daily. Amara continued opening each dawn, but the atmosphere inside remained vacant. The seat sat unused. Furniture arranged meticulously, the fragrance of seasonings dissipating faster than previously. Even the sounds of her preparation couldn't occupy the silence anymore. Mina had ceased appearing entirely. One evening after closing, Amara discovered a message slipped beneath the entrance. "I apologize deeply, Amara. Continuing this is impossible for me. Please remain safe." Amara clutched the message firmly within her grasp, her throat constricting. Sequentially, everyone was abandoning her, not from lack of concern, but from overwhelming fear. And who possessed grounds for judgment? When Jin Tae Sung fixed his attention upon you, your existence shattered. But she rejected shattering. Or minimally she convinced herself of that, until the evening everything transformed. The hour was advanced when she secured the establishment, extending past midnight. The thoroughfares remained largely abandoned, neon signage flickering weakly in the distance. She fastened the restaurant entrance and pivoted. only discovering 2 dark vehicles stationed at the curb. Her stomach plummeted. From the initial vehicle, 3 suited men emerged, silent, powerfully built, extensions of Jin Tae Sung's empire. One inclined his head slightly. "Miss Amara, our employer requests your presence." Amara's grip constricted on her belongings. "And should I refuse?" The man straightened, his expression vacant. "Then we'll escort you regardless." Her respiration caught, but she elevated her chin forcefully. "Inform your employer if he desires conversation. He understands my location." The man didn't react. He opened the vehicle entrance, his tone measured. "Please don't complicate this unnecessarily." Momentarily, Amara contemplated fleeing. But toward where? Whom could she contact? She existed alone within the metropolis, and Jin Tae Sung had already demonstrated his capacity to reach her anywhere. Therefore, she exhaled gradually, squared her posture, and entered the vehicle. The journey proceeded silently, the urban illumination flashing past in transient trails of amber and azure. Amara maintained her hands folded rigidly in her lap, concealing her trembling fingers. Eventually, the vehicles halted before a towering, isolated structure at the Han River's periphery. Not an ostentatious tower, but a stronghold. The men escorted her inward. Marble flooring gleamed beneath subdued lighting. The atmosphere carried faint traces of leather and tobacco. Everything regarding the location whispered affluence, authority, and jeopardy. And then she identified him. Jin Tae Sung occupied the head position of an extensive table within a private chamber, his suit flawless as consistently, a glass of amber spirits resting in his grasp. He glanced upward as she entered, and a gradual smile shaped his lips. "You arrived," he stated. Amara glared at him. "I possessed minimal alternatives." "Alternatives," Jin Tae Sung repeated, swirling the golden liquid within his glass. "Everything constitutes a choice, Amara. You chose to enter my vehicle. You chose to restrain yourself from causing disruption. You chose to confront me. And you chose to terrorize my existence," she snapped. His smile broadened. "Did I accomplish that?" "Absolutely," she hissed. "You eliminated my suppliers, frightened away my customers, vandalized my restaurant, all because I demanded payment for your meal." Momentarily, his expression hardened, his midnight eyes sharpening. Then, equally swiftly, he reclined in his seat, amusement dancing across his features. "Are you aware," he voiced softly, "that nobody has addressed me in that manner for a decade?" Amara's chest constricted. Perhaps because they possess better judgment. Or perhaps, Jin Tae Sung murmured, positioning his glass downward, because they're absent from the intensity you possess. He rose, his commanding figure advancing nearer, every movement calculated, the atmosphere thickened with each diminishing inch of separation. He approached until he positioned himself directly before her. "You captivate me, Amara," he stated, his tone measured, perilously so. "Are you aware what befalls individuals who captivate me?" She swallowed forcefully, rejecting retreat. "They vanish." His mouth curved. "Occasionally, they blaze so luminously, I cannot avert my gaze." Her pulse accelerated, every instinct demanding she escape. Yet her footing remained steady, her frame quaking with a perplexing combination of terror and resistance. "State your intentions with me, Jin Tae Sung," she demanded. For an extended moment he remained silent, his focus secured onto hers, penetrating, relentless, searching. Then he inclined downward slightly, his words a murmur only she could perceive. "Everything." Amara's respiration faltered, her chest tightening. "You cannot possess me," he grinned. "Cannot or will not?" "Both." The declaration escaped her lips like ammunition. And for the initial occasion, Jin Tae Sung's grin wavered. His demeanor darkened, his jaw clenching, though not from fury, with something alternative, something weightier, more perilous. Fixation. He didn't compel her that evening, didn't make contact, didn't even issue warnings. Instead, he released her. His operatives transported her homeward, the metropolis still shrouded in quietness, her heart thundering the entire journey. But when Amara reclined in bed hours afterward, studying the ceiling, she recognized the reality. He hadn't released her. He had drawn her further inward. Because from that evening forward, she wasn't merely defending her restaurant anymore. She was defending herself, her autonomy, the delicate boundary between her existence and his. And internally, she feared it had already become too late. The following morning, when she accessed Amara's kitchen, there awaited a bouquet of orchids positioned on the counter. Ivory, immaculate, refined, no message, no identification. But she required none. She understood precisely who had dispatched them. And as she observed the blossoms, her stomach twisted with apprehension and something far more hazardous. Because for the initial occasion since encountering Jin Tae Sung, Amara remained uncertain if she despised him, or if she was terrified of how significantly part of her desired understanding signified being desired by a man of his nature. The initial snowfall of winter descended gently across Seoul. Thoroughfares glistened with crystalline frost, neon illumination reflecting against the frozen pavements. Amara's kitchen had recommenced operations weeks prior, more vibrant than previously, with replacement furniture, renewed decor, and patrons finally courageous enough to return. But presently, as she served steaming portions of pepper soup for a table of inquisitive Korean university students, Amara sensed observation upon her. Not merely the curious examination of customers, but the invisible burden of him, Jin Tae Sung. Since that evening at his compound, he had never been distant. Occasionally she'd notice a sophisticated dark vehicle stationed across the roadway. Occasionally a stranger would enter, request nothing, and depart moments afterward. She comprehended it was his method of monitoring her without interference, and though she convinced herself she detested him, her pulse always quickened when she sensed his proximity. It approached midnight when she finally secured the restaurant. The streets remained hushed, snowflakes drifting languidly through the darkness. She wrapped her scarf more securely around her throat and pivoted to fasten the entrance, only to freeze completely. He was present. Jin Tae Sung stood across the thoroughfare, solitary with no security personnel on this occasion. His dark overcoat was powdered with snow, his sharp features pale beneath the winter luminescence. Their gazes connected. Amara's heart collided against her ribcage, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "State your purpose, Jin Tae Sung," she called, her tone controlled despite the tempest internally. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he traversed the roadway, each stride calculated, producing soft, crunching sounds in the snow. When he halted before her, he positioned himself near enough that she could distinguish the faint tremor in his hand as he extracted something from his coat. Not a weapon, a velvet container. Amara's lips separated, astonishment flashing in her eyes. This cannot be genuine. "It is," Jin Tae Sung interrupted, his tone quiet yet unwavering. "I have dismantled empires for less than what you've done to me. You embarrassed me, opposed me, challenged me directly, and yet," his voice fractured slightly, "I've never desired anything more intensely in my existence than belonging to you." Amara's respiration stuttered. The crime emperor, the man dreaded throughout all Korea, stood before her in the snowfall, descending to one knee. Affirmative, kneeling. The velvet container opened, revealing an understated platinum band. No gemstones, no embellishments, simply a ring, plain and undecorated, yet authentic. "I can provide you wealth," he whispered, eyes secured on hers. "I can provide you authority. I can eliminate every individual who's ever regarded you with disrespect. But none of that holds significance if I cannot possess your heart. Therefore, I'm imploring you, Amara, don't become my property. Become my equal. Become my empress." The universe seemed to halt, the urban sounds diminished, the snow suspended motionless in the atmosphere, and all Amara could perceive was the thundering of her own heartbeat. "Jin Tae Sung," her voice quaked, "do you comprehend what you're requesting? I'm unlike you. I don't belong in your realm of weaponry and darkness." "You belong wherever you determine to be," he stated fiercely, rising to his feet, his eyes blazing. "And if that necessitates I must dismantle my realm to construct yours, I will execute it." Tears burned her eyes. She had resisted him, opposed him, rejected him at every opportunity. And yet here he positioned himself, selecting her, humbling himself for her, a man who had never submitted to anyone. Her lips quivered as she whispered, "And should I decline?" Jin Tae Sung's jaw tightened. "Then I will expend the remainder of my existence demonstrating to you that I am deserving until you accept." The genuineness in his declaration shattered her. Gradually, Amara stepped forward, her fingers extended outward, grazing against his frigid cheek. He closed his eyes at her contact like a man starved of warmth. "Jin Tae Sung," she whispered, "you terrify me, you exasperate me, but you also—" She swallowed forcefully, her tears finally descending. "You make me sense vitality in a manner I never imagined was achievable." His eyes snapped open, searching hers desperately. "Does that signify?" "Yes," she exhaled, "but under one stipulation." "Anything," he stated instantly. "You must learn to cherish me as your equal," she whispered. "Not as your possession, not as your trophy. As Amara, the woman who will position beside you, not beneath you." For a moment, silence suspended between them. Then gradually Jin Tae Sung smiled. Not the frigid, mocking expression she had grown familiar with, but a genuine smile, tender and unguarded. "As you desire, Amara." He placed the ring gently on her finger. The platinum circle shimmered under the falling snowflakes, and, as he pulled her close, kissing her with a passion that blazed hotter than any fire, Amara understood the reality. The underworld king had surrendered not just to her love, but to her strength. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button, subscribe for more amazing stories, and drop a comment telling me your thoughts on Amara and Jin Tae Sung's journey. Did the ending satisfy you? Share your reactions. Catch you in the next video.